Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center's most southerly and easterly office. Here in Antananarivo, Madagascar, we are going to be talking today about finding and citing position papers. Now, this particular webinar has a tie-in with the HCAD program, but the things we're going to be talking about are not limited at all to that program. Position papers you can find in all sorts of different areas of government, the nonprofit sector, business, education, and more. So whatever your program is, if you are dealing with this type of literature, we are happy to help. So the Writing Center, of course, has a wide suite of services, of which this webinar is just one of the offerings. You can work with us through online asynchronous resources where you watch on your own time. You can schedule a consultation with us, either a asynchronous appointment where you schedule time, upload your paper, and we send you feedback via email. And also you can request a phone or Zoom appointment by sending us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. We also have course paper templates, blog posts on specific topics, and a complete archive of our webinars and more on our website. Again, the process, if you'd like to schedule an appointment with us, go to our WC Online scheduling system and go ahead and reserve a time for yourself. By the time that appointment rolls around, submit your draft to Canvas, and we'll send you feedback generally within 24 hours. We've got a lot of webinars coming up, some of which are in real time and some of which are marked, as you can see in the schedule here, as virtual releases. For a virtual release, this means that we are going to record the video and put it online for you to view, which means in some cases, like for this webinar, we are anticipating the start of the course or dropping something to be available before the assignment so that if you are looking ahead and you say, oh, I would like to know more about that, you can watch that video in advance. And indeed, some students choose to watch the video, then read through the assignment, and then watch the video again because that lets them get more each time. If that works for you, if that's part of your process, absolutely. Do what works for you. But we have our complete schedule on the Writing Center website, and after each webinar has been offered, we will post it to the Writing Center website so you can view it. Something to keep in mind, because we have a growing number of webinars every term, we have a sorted course catalog. So if you are in, say, the HCAD program, you can go to this tab, just scroll down past the schedule of classes for current term, and you'll see this tabbed catalog, and click on HCAD in this case, and that will show you a list of all the webinars that tie in with specific HCAD courses, and we've labeled those so you can see exactly which week and which assignment. Other resources, you will see me using our APA course paper template. You can find these videos on YouTube, so if you're on the go and you want to listen to one of our webinar recordings, you absolutely can. And again, did I mention that we have a blog? All right, let us move forward. All right, so we are going to be looking at three main things today. We're going to explore the genre of gray literature, or genres of gray literature. Then we're going to focus on three key types of gray literature, leading into exploring the HCAD 621 Week 1 assignment, which is to write some things related to a white paper. And then we'll finish with our normal drafting and outlining while we talk about how to implement some of the things that we've been talking about, how to use the assignment instructions as a basis for drafting and outline a roadmap for your paper. And we should have you wrapped up in, I think, under 40 minutes. So, gray literature. What is gray literature? Well, gray literature is published material that falls out of the so-called traditional streams of scholarship. The traditional streams, we have commercial publications, where the publisher's goal is make money. Think of any sort of mass market book. And we have academic or scholarly research, where certainly they do not object to making money, but the goal is the advancement of knowledge here in different ways, shapes, and forms. So gray literature is generally produced by an organization that is not using a formal peer review process. And this is probably a good point to talk a little bit about peer review. When I say a formal peer review process, this usually means 2 or 3 readers who are not associated with the author, who provide anonymous, detailed review and feedback to help ensure that a publication is of high quality, that is objective, documented, all those things that help make it a good resource, and that gives some sort of quality control, if you will. Now, you may have noticed that I said not connected with the author or authors. And that is because if you have something like a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation, it's not that there's not a goal for rigor there, but it's not coming through that same anonymous peer review process, because you usually know the professors that are reviewing, and they are able to contribute insight, but also there are certain biases that need to be accounted for. And so acknowledging that this is different from the formal anonymous peer review, where often they're able to track down experts in the field to weigh in with other stuff. So a master's thesis, for example, would usually be labeled gray literature rather than the academic scholarly review, peer-reviewed journal articles kind of thing. So what else might fall in there? Well, organizational research reports. It's where you are saying, oh, here's what we did. Some people would exclude this if it was published in a third-party journal rather than published by, say, the organization itself that's giving the report. Conference proceedings, because conference proceedings will present what was given at the conference without the same process as for a peer-reviewed journal article. Lecture notes, yeah, it's not something that is published as a book usually. It's not something that's a peer-reviewed journal article, so it's falling outside of those streams, but it can certainly have helpful information. Newsletters. Position papers, where you are arguing for or against something. White papers, which we'll talk about more. So one way to understand what gray literature is, the gray literature is a catch-all term for printed writings, for literature that presents information, positions, or recommendations, but isn't coming out of a traditional book or journal process for presenting research to the world. So, with that general definition in mind, let's zoom in on 3 types of gray literature: white papers, green papers, and position papers. Now, I'll tell you in advance, you don't need to remember a whole lot about green papers, but it's easier to understand what white papers are and are not if you are aware of their corresponding counterpart, the green papers. Alright, so what's a white paper? Well, a white paper could be defined as a persuasive essay that uses data and clear argumentation to address a problem. Classic white paper structure: introduction, hey, here's this problem, it's a very significant one, here's some things that you can do to solve it. And you can guess from that there's an emphasis on practical, actionable content. This isn't going to be an abstract, theoretical, or philosophical discussion. It's, oh, here's a problem. The problem is important enough to solve. Here are some ways to do it. And this is not the same thing as marketing copy. White paper should not be marketing material. It should not be part of an advertising campaign or marketing campaign for a particular product or service. Now, it may be promoting a method of addressing something, but it's separate from marketing copy. And part of what makes a white paper persuasive is that it should be written for a specific audience, where you're trying to promote or encourage a specific outcome, but not, outright sell them, oh, buy this stuff from us. Because again, that's marketing material. Another way to understand it is a white paper presents, here's an issue, and here are some ways of addressing it. Some examples that you can follow up later. So here's one from the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. It's redefining primary care for the 21st century. From the same organization, the evidence base for telehealth, reassurance in the face of rapid expansion of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is a position paper about something that has become very familiar to many Americans over the last 2 years, but was barely or scarcely used before: telemedicine. An example from the American Nurses Association. So the AHRQ, for the first two examples, this is a government agency that is producing white papers. But here we have an example of a white paper produced by a professional organization, the American Nurses Association, to wit, optimal nurse staffing to improve quality of care and patient outcomes. And one more, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, which is an advocacy organization. Not quite the same thing as a professional association, but related. The Institute for Healthcare Improvement Innovation series is a whole set of white papers about just what it sounds like: innovations that can be used to improve healthcare in the United States. And one more from the Center for Health Design, Healthcare at Home. So if a white paper is presenting a problem and a solution, what is a green paper then? Well, a green paper is almost always referring to a tentative government report on some proposed action. But it's not saying, here's what to do. It's saying, here's what we're considering doing, or here's what we have gleaned so far. And part of that tentative thing is that a green paper is used to solicit or elicit feedback from the public. Now, the public could be a series of experts on this. It could be the general community. It could even be regular voters, people like you or myself. But the idea is that the green paper is not a finalized thing. It's something you're putting out there to provoke discussion, to see how people feel about something, because it's designed to catalyze debate and to collect public feedback. And so a green paper may go through multiple revisions before it forms the final green paper, and then might be further refined into a white paper which says, okay, well, we collected all this stuff, and here are the recommendations that we're actually saying we think this should be done. And again, you want to pay attention to the labeling, because a common pitfall with this assignment is to look at something and say, oh, they're talking about proposed policy. They're talking about developing a white paper. Great, let's use this. Turns out, well, yeah, they were talking about developing a white paper because it's not a white paper yet, because it's a green paper presenting, okay, here's where we are. Anyone have any suggestions for making this better, or any objections we should know about? And I've included here a link to a green paper from a government entity about unleashing American innovation. So what about a position paper? Well, it's important to realize that white paper and green paper are different ends of a spectrum, and that you can have something that is doing more of emphasis on here's the problem, here's what to do to solve it, versus here's what we think is going on. There is a middle ground between that, and that's where the position paper sits. What it doesn't function is it's presenting an opinion. Could be from an individual, could be an organization, could be a government ministry, could be a nonprofit. But this presented opinion is part of an argument for a particular position, or to explain something that is being done or being enacted. And a key thing separating a position paper from a peer-reviewed journal article is that the position paper should not be presenting original experimental research, which is often part of peer-reviewed journal articles. You might summarize this as, here is what we believe and or recommend. The position paper saying, yeah, we think this should be done for these reasons. Now, often one way that you might encounter this if you read the newspaper is through a letter to the editor. And I've included a letter that is responding to a paper about disparities in health and healthcare. Also, the American Hospital Association has a lot of position papers that you can read here. Here's one on international trade. So you can see position papers can come in a variety of different topics. And at this point, let's turn to HCAD 621's Week 1 assignment, because this assignment requires that you write some things leading to other things, and we want to make sure that you're understanding what's happening at each stage, what the expectations are. So this is for the Healthcare Policies and Ethics class, which has a Week 1 assignment called simply White Paper. So what does this ask you to do? Well, we are in the HCAD program here, so it's saying, okay, there are many places to influence the federal legislative process. Professional organizations often hire full or part-time lobbyists to present the consensus of a group on an issue. By becoming an active member of a professional organization, healthcare administrators can raise issues and testify before congressional committees. Now, whenever you see a preamble like this, I think it's important to ask, why is this preamble here? Because this is actually giving you clues about what the assignment should include and what the function of this and the practical application of it. So there are many places to influence the federal legislative process, one of which can be writing a white paper or circulating a white paper. And when you see the note about professional organizations often hiring full or part-time lobbyists to present the consensus of a group, well, that sounds like a position paper, doesn't it? By becoming an active member of a professional organization, which is one of those entities that tends to produce white papers, healthcare administrators can raise issues and testify before congressional committees. So this is about presenting that opinion or recommendation. All right, continuing on, the next sentence talks about analyzing different positions and formulating your own. And we see the assignment is to write a white paper to communicate why a professional group should consider developing a one-page position paper on your specific position on this issue. So this is why we went into that breakdown of white papers, green papers, and position papers, because they're not quite the same thing. You're being asked to write a white paper, which the crux of the white paper is this recommendation to deliver a one-page position paper on this issue. So you are writing your paper about why we should do something else that involves writing a separate paper. Got that? All right, let's continue. So here are the parameters. For background, you're going to research health position papers and briefings from a healthcare organization. You get to pick which one. Could be the American Nurses Association, the American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association, or other specialty organizations that tie in with that. A key thing, it should be something that interests you strongly, and it should be something that comes from this sort of organization. Now, the instructions helpfully give you a couple samples of healthcare policy white papers. We'll talk about how to find more later. Once you've reviewed that, you're going to formulate your own individual position on your chosen topic based on the research you've done from reading sample position papers. Now, keep in mind you're not limited to this list. It's a good starting point, especially the ASTHO thing, because that's multiple policy and position statements. But you want to be formulating your position. It might be helpful to start out and say, okay, here's the organization for the purpose of the assignment. Now, it could be an organization that you are in fact a member of, or it could be one that you say you're going to assume that role for this paper. And then here's the specific instructions about content. It should be organized according to these bullets here. You should introduce the issue with data supporting the importance in your particular state or community. So, okay, data relevant to your local context. Support or explain why this issue requires legislative attention. So it's not just saying, oh, we should spend more time on this. It's what you're asking the state legislature to do. Analyze how various approaches might impact the administration of healthcare organizations. Always a good thing. Cite other organizations' suggested approaches. Now, they may agree with you, in which case it'll be a relatively fast citation, or they may suggest something different that you need to counter, in which case it's probably going to take a little bit more discussion. You also need to explain why your suggested approach addresses the problem in keeping with the general philosophy, right care, right time and place, with the least expense to the healthcare system, which is a good ethical approach. All right, so you may be recommending many things, but you want to make sure that they align with these principles outlined there: right care, right time and place, least expense to the healthcare system. Okay. And then the rubric goes over most of the things mentioned there. The order is not quite the same as in the assignment instructions, so just make sure you look carefully, and I will say for this one, it seems to be pretty much in line, just the order is slightly different from how it's listed in here. I would say follow the order in the instructions here because it's a very logical thing, and that will help you with structuring it. All right, so you were asked to look for position papers, so that is something we should talk about here. Now, the easiest way, because you're being asked to refer to position papers or white papers from different organizations, is to do a search for the name of the organization in quotation marks, and then a particular thing that you're looking for, like white paper, in quotation marks. Now, if you're looking for position papers, of course you would substitute position paper for white paper. But remember, our goal here, the assignment, is to write this paper, and specifically you're being asked to write a white paper about why you should your organization should deliver a position paper. Okay, so those are our basic parameters. All right. General tip: place the name of the organization in quotation marks. That will help you make sure that you're getting stuff for that specific organization, because there are many that have American Association in there. If you want to make sure you get the ANA, the American Nurses Association, put that in quotation marks. Same thing with whether you're looking for a white paper or position paper, put that term in quotation marks as well. Now, here are just a couple examples of places where you can go and look for white papers, because there are publishers, especially larger ones like Sage and Springer, that do collect white papers on their sites for a variety of purposes. Now, the second bulleted link that you see there, that's actually white papers of interest to librarians. So you can see this is an area where it said, okay, well, we think that people who use our resources might want to know something about this, about things we have to offer and recommend to solve problems and challenges they face. Well, they got a section on white papers on that. Same thing with Springer Nature. They have stuff about nature. And Sage, which is one of the big social science and science publishers, they have their own white paper site there. Some journals do run white papers, and because they know that people may be looking specifically for them, they sometimes will put them on their website, as you can see in this fourth bullet link here. All right, at this point we're going to take a look at how to translate some of these instructions into an outline of your paper. Now, we won't delve too deeply into the content itself, but we'll start with how to lay this out and really get started. And for this, it would be very helpful to review a couple basic principles for all your assignments. Make sure you answer each prompt directly and then come back in more detail. Make sure that your wording follows that of the prompts, so it's clear you are addressing those specific prompts. Use consistent word choices to refer to the same things. Make sure you use the rubric and the instructions to choose your headings and to look at how long each section should be in relation. And anything that's listed as a suggestion, I would recommend treating as a requirement. From here on, we're going to use the APA course paper template. You can download that here. If you grabbed it earlier, great. all set. So I've gone ahead and grabbed a copy of our APA course paper template, and I've just pasted the instructions, or part of the instructions, into this to serve as a guide. And one of the things that's helpful to do is to go through and start crossing out things that you can eliminate to focus your attention on what you have to add. So we know all the papers in this program are going to be in APA style, so we can just cross it out. And this note here, organize your position paper according to the structure. Okay, we're going to be following the bullets there, so we can cross that out already. And you see, okay, formulate your individual position, cross that out. And through actions like this, you can start making things more specific. So let's just model how to do that. So let's say that your particular context is Tennessee, or is in Tennessee. Now that's going to depend a little bit on what side of the mountains you're on. So I used to teach in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and in Chattanooga, it happens to be that if you're going from Nashville to Chattanooga, you have to dip into Georgia because you're going around the mountains. And so because of this, although Chattanooga is itself in Tennessee, it belongs more to the Northwest Georgia area. So if we are specifying our community, let us say alright, so we've specified that. And so we're starting to make things more circumspect. Alright. So looking at this, how it relates to a particular issue and policy. So you can take this and start making this into sub-bullets. So the issue it addresses, how it relates, and so, alright, so we add a sub-bullet. Let's say that our healthcare policy issue here is going to be, let's say that we have decided we're going to go with telehealth. It happens we have an example in the slides earlier about that, so let's take a look at this. Telehealth, and let's head over, and you see this is the AHRQ, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. And we have here a white paper. It even tells us about the creation of this. So this was produced by two entities, with the third for the AHRQ. So AHRQ, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, which is located in the greater Washington, D.C. area, engaged these organizations to produce a report, which is published in this white paper. All right, and we see some disclaimers here, and we can just move in here and start reading this. Now, we're not going to go into the weeds in this. This is just an illustrative example, but we can see here that they discuss primary care, the context. They move into talking about some issues related to primary care. And if we scroll down here and look at just at the headings, we see they're talking about comprehensiveness as a concept, so they're introducing information, and some things about measuring it. And so we go to the conclusion, and this is really where the recommendations are, where they say, oh, we should do this. And we see they're saying that it is not optimally configured, that there's room for improvement, and improvement in how the teams that are providing the best care should be paid. And this précis, this summarizes what the main thing the paper was doing. So it gives a starting point, saying, oh, here's some things that can be used to make this better. And so that is a very white paper type thing to do. Some will start with a sort of summary as well. Because this one ends with it, we can look back and see, oh, here's how this is a section with definitions and framework. Okay, so if we look up here and see what is primary care, that is defining what primary care is. What do we know about it? Okay, it's showing the limits of knowledge. Frameworks. Okay, so it's showing these major frameworks, and the asterisks help us see, oh, this is something that is common to all of them. So you can see how we can use that map at the end of the paper to make sense of what comes before and see, oh, here's that function that's going on. And you can certainly use that in your own papers, because that way of laying out, okay, here's what you need to know to understand the issue that I'm describing, and then for the solution that I propose to make sense because you understand the issue that it is specifically addressing. Great. So, looking back at this, what is the position here? Well, let's say that the position was Now, I don't know what position you will end up taking, but here are some things to keep in mind. Your individual position, this is not just saying what you believe, but it's also what you believe you should convince your organization to produce that position paper on, that hypothetical position paper. So don't just say, this is what people should do, but also go the step of connecting it to what your organization should do. And this should is probably going to include publishing a paper on this, because that is what the assignment asks you to do, to put yourself in the shoes of telling your organization that they should publish and disseminate something on this topic. All right, now you can go ahead and fill this in, but let's talk a little bit about how to cite white papers. So here we have this page on the AHRQ website, and the page happens to include the specific white paper. See this publication number? This will come in handy. All right, let's talk about how to cite this. And I will say that they do have their suggested citation here. This suggested citation does not happen to be an APA style, and although this is what they suggest, because you are writing in APA style and being graded in APA style, we want to make sure that this is formatted accordingly for APA style. Now, the go-to reference for APA 7th edition is, of course, the APA 7th edition publication manual. But if you don't have it, in a quick pinch, there are many examples on the APA Style website. apastyle.apa.org being the official APA Style website of the American Psychological Association, which is responsible for having created APA Style, because it's APA Style is the American Psychological Association's style. So let's go ahead and head on down to textual works. And you'll see that there is a whole section here, reports and gray literature. So these are being lumped together. Some people will treat them as separate categories. Other people say reports is a subcategory of gray literature. Doesn't matter. For us, we are going to be looking at this, and we see, oh, there is one for white paper references. So let's take a look at that. And we have white paper with a group author. We have white paper with individual authors. Group author would be like if in this case, the Department for Business Innovation and Skills claimed credit as the organization. They did not list individual, oh, this was John Smith, this was not Jane Rococo. They just listed the name of the organization there. Now, if you are citing something with individual authors, as here, you want to make sure you follow this format, which does require that you spell out their names. All right, so what are our components here? We've got the authors, got the publication year, got the title of the white paper, a note that it is a white paper, who published it, in this case the Georgia Tech College of Computing, and some information on how to access it, which in this case happens to be a direct URL to grab the white paper. All right, well, let's take a look back at this, and we see that we have the suggested information here, and we can even take some of this as our starting point here. So just copy and paste this, and if we go into Word, we scroll down to a reference list, we'll get rid of those placeholder citations. If you paste and you see the font is off, the size is off, or some other thing, go ahead and set that to match destination formatting. And we see, oh, we've got that hanging indent, and much of the work is done for us already. Now we still need to format this to be in APA 7th edition, so let's start with those authors' names. So we want a comma after the last name, period after the initial. Repeat that for each of the authors. Now, in this case here, the October 2016 was placed at the end. Well, in APA style, we normally only include the publication year, and it goes right after the author. Now, if we look at our example here in APA style, we see that we have the title of the white paper itself in sentence case and italicized. So we need to change this to be in sentence case. In this case, primary care will go lowercase. And 21st century, well, that is a proper noun, so that actually stays as is. We need to italicize that text. White paper we're going to put in square brackets. If you look at this, we see, oh, white is capitalized, paper is not, so we'll change that. And this trivia about who was the company hired and the contract numbers, we don't need that. So we have the publication number, and you'll see that's not included here. It is for government reports, but this isn't quite that, so we can take that out. Same thing, city and state is no longer included in APA 7th edition. So we have, okay, who wrote it? That's this information here. We have when was it published, what's it called, clarification that it's a white paper, and, oh, who published it? The Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. Great. So what if we took a different example here? Let's say that you were using, let's say you were using this one here. So this website will take us to the Institute for Healthcare Improvement's innovation series of white papers. So they got multiple papers here. Let's say we were dealing with the whole system quality white paper. So we click on that, and we'll see what this is. This is a white paper that they have a supplementary video. Okay, well, if you were going to include that, it happens to be on YouTube, so you can cite it as YouTube video. But let's just go to directly to the PDF here. And so in this case, they do require a login. Okay, so white papers are usually open to the public, but not always. Sometimes you need to go into a library. In this case, I would try searching for it by name through the ACU library website or contacting the library staff if you can't get to it. Now, in this case, if we are trying to look at the whole paper, the question is, where do we need to go exactly. But actually, right now, I just want to look at how to cite it. And so we'll go ahead and take this as our starting point, realizing that you will need to make some adjustments to make this compatible in APA style. So first thing, we're going to do match destination formatting. Now we're going to add some missing punctuation, as you saw me do earlier. And the publication year in this case is 2021. And we have this title here. We want to change that to sentence case, so we have this case tool here. Same thing here. And we don't include city and state here. We put 2021 earlier. And here we'd want to replace this with a direct URL, or as direct as we can. So for example, a direct link here, but that does take you to the login system, and so that's not super helpful for anyone. So let's go ahead and put in this link here, which takes the reader to exactly the place to see the stuff for this publication, which happens to include a PDF and video components. All right. Now, it's always good to look back over that, and you might see, oh, here's something that's missing. This is supposed to be in AP 7th edition, white. The P in paper is lowercase, square bracket. So, who wrote it? When was it published? What's it called? Clarification that it's a white paper in square brackets. Who published it? And then how to get to it through that link. Now, if you're wondering, can you include a link here as well? Absolutely. And in fact, I would recommend doing that. In this case, you could go ahead and grab the title there without having to go back to the original slides. So you look for redefining that. Aha! There's our paper here. You can go straight to that and grab the link, because there's a link directly to that document. And we add this now. So now we have looked at it and said, okay, there was something missing that made these not look like they were quite the same thing. Gone ahead and added that. Great. These look consistent. They look like they're both citations for white papers, because we see list of authors, publication year, title of the thing, and a clarification that it's a white paper, the same thing. And then we have the name of the publisher and a direct link to get at that stuff. Same thing here. All right, so that concludes our webinar today. We are very happy to see you back here at ACU. And remember, you can contact us through various channels. You can send us an email. You can schedule an appointment for feedback. You can go to the Writing Center website. Either way, I hope you have a good rest of the day, and welcome back for another exciting semester.